Glad to be with you. My name is actually pronounced Michael Liimatta.
Sorry about that.
I'm not an Italian, I'm a Finn. And I just want to give President Obama a shout out for his fashion sense. If you notice, I'm wearing the same outfit he had almost. Great minds think alike. But we've prepared a PowerPoint, which I'd like to share with you now, about what we do at Connecting for Good. As we mentioned before, am I able to use this? Okay.
It's probably gonna be.
We all know that low-income families can really greatly benefit from connectivity of any sort, especially of the high-speed variety. It provides educational success increasing at all levels. We have economic development in the whole area of online job search and career development. Access is increased to social services and health information. You know, the cost-saving advantages of online shopping are incredible. You know, a huge percentage of our low-income families live in what are called food deserts. And as online shopping is moving even toward grocery shopping, we know that diapers, for instance, are cheaper through Amazon than they are at a corner bodega. So low-income families can save money by being connected. Also, it aids them in their help with vehicles, safe and affordable housing, connects to distant family and friends. And because so many of those who live in public housing and assisted types of housing arrangements are immigrants, it's a great boost toward the path of becoming integrated in our great society and toward the path toward citizenship. Now, having done this for a while, I think we've come to understand there are four reasons why people don't connect. And we have believed that the number one reason is cost. People are not online because, at least for their own situation, it is too expensive. But interestingly enough, we believe that the biggest cost is not the connectivity, but it's the equipment. Being able to buy a computer is probably the biggest barrier to people being able to get online. And you might think, well, you know, there's a lot of folks using smartphones today as a way to connect, but I'd like you to try to create your own resume using a smartphone, or to pursue any sort of serious academics. It's not going to happen unless you have a big screen to work on. Number two is intimidation. You know, where do people who are not using the internet go to learn the basic skills of sending email, surfing the web? Where do they go to learn these things? And the third is relevancy, not knowing what can be done. A lot of people say, I don't need the internet, only because they don't realize that they could actually check the weather, check the bus routes, check what's playing at the local cinema. You know, there's a whole lot of things they could do if they only knew they could do it. And the fourth thing is affordable service. But I think all the studies out there have affirmed that if you get the first three issues taken care of, people will find a way to connect. I think we need to be careful that we don't flip it by believing that because cheap internet is not going to change the whole dynamic for people without the first three in place. A couple of things about the Metro Kansas City area. I mean, we're light speeds ahead with Google Fiber and other options now, but there's a whole group of our population that's significant and is not connected. You know, the US Census of 2013 asked the question for the first time, do you have an in-home internet connection? Do you own a personal computer? And Kansas City, Kansas was identified as the 7th least connected city in America. And all the rest of them are mostly border towns with high immigrant populations. So less than half of the families in Kansas City, Kansas have a connection. In our situation, Connecting for Good has deliberately located ourselves in the communities with the least internet use. And so we're talking about communities where 80% of the people who are mostly immigrant and low income do not own a computer and do not have internet access. And here in our Kansas City public schools, 70% of the children don't have an internet connection at home, which means when they leave the school building, there's no way for them to get online, except McDonald's or the public library. But when do kids do homework? Usually it's after 10 o'clock at night. Another thing that makes this challenging is that 40% of the kids in the school district will be moving in the next year. So there's this very transient population that we have to contend with. And the other important understanding that we've come to is that 78% of the non-users that are in a low-income grade are actually living in multi-family dwellings. So we believe that this concentration of people that are non-users is a huge opportunity we can take advantage of. So Connecting for Good essentially has a four-pronged strategy that we use to bridge the digital divide. The first is inexpensive refurbished computers. Every city sends thousands of useful computers to scrap dealers to be parted out. And so we're kind of on a crusade now for reuse instead of recycling. To take useful computers from the city, from the universities, from our corporations, and kind of work as kind of gleaners of useful electronics and passing them on to low-income families. We also have a curriculum we call the Digital Life Skills, which takes people from how to turn on a computer to how to use the internet and how to use email. We're also all about free and affordable internet connectivity. And finally, we're really focusing on creating more public access, computer labs, and community technology centers. So we're really attacking it from all different angles here. With computer recycling, we're saying reuse, don't recycle. And so we're just right now working with one of our local cities to allow us to go through their stuff to see what's good before they send it off to the junk dealers. Here's where actually our about 1,000 computers that we sold last year ended up. They went to neighborhoods where the census found 1 in 5 households owned computers. So you can see the yellow dots represent all the households that got our computers in one section of Kansas City. The lightest color is really where less than 20% of homes had computers, and that's where most of ours end up. We sell our desktops for $75 and our laptops for $150. We can do that because we're part of what's called the Microsoft Citizenship Program that lets us buy Windows 7 licenses for just $6 a piece, and Microsoft Office 2010 Home and Student for $6 a piece. And we operate our own refurbishing lab as well, using volunteers and our own employees. The free digital life skills classes that we offer are required. You cannot buy a $75 computer unless you first take the 3-hour classes. And basically the things we touch on are email use, search engine use, how to get to health and medical stuff, government stuff, job applications, all of these different things. And the whole purpose is not just to say, here's how you do this stuff, but really to expand people's understanding. This kind of deals with the relevancy piece. I bet you didn't know all that you could do on the computer. And so who did we reach last year in 2014 with our free classes? 2,106 students in 244 sessions at 10 different sites in the inner city. 25% had never used a computer, 75% were over 50 years old, 80% were minorities. 75% of the people had an income of under $20,000 a year, 2/3 were women, and half of them had a child in their home. Now, a part of the statistics that we have here are really the people who aren't supposed to be online. And I think we could have done even more and reached even more people if we had the staff. I think what we found when we began doing this in our inner city is that there was a huge pent-up demand that had no outlet previously. And in some ways, we used the $75 computer as sort of a carrot. People heard, hey, I can get a cheap computer, I just got to sit through this boring class. But by the end of it, they suddenly get charged up about what I can do. And that's why we've had 50-year-old men whose love for learning is reunited, and they went out and finished their GED. People who actually went out and cleaned houses for a month so they could buy a $75 computer. People who have gone on to get their degrees online, found jobs. Because what happened is they realized that there was this whole new opportunity available to them. With community technology centers, we are operating a center with the Kansas City Housing Authority, with open Wi-Fi and an open laboratory 5 days a week. We're also beginning to work with the City of Kansas City and the City of Kansas City, Missouri, to create more of these centers, which will allow for public access. We really believe in the internet in the home, but we also believe that group centers and training opportunities are really a key to making people aware of what they can do when they take the computer home with them. Another thing that we have been doing is wireless connectivity at public housing and in Section 8 properties. Right now, using Wi-Fi mesh technology, Connecting for Good provides absolutely free internet to 500 low-income households. You can see right now the map is of the Juniper Gardens housing project, which is the oldest and largest public housing in the state of Kansas. And there, about 300 families have free internet. And I really believe that as you think about your city strategy, the multifamily properties is critical, because these are large concentrations of people who are not users. And for them, if you couple free access with affordable computers and training, you can revolutionize their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Our next speaker is Cheptoo Kositany-Buckner. I hope I pronounced that right. Kansas City Public Library Deputy Director. She's been working in libraries since 1990, and she chose to work in libraries because she has a lifelong love of books. Go figure. Reading and knowledge, but more importantly, because of her belief that the library plays a very significant role in the community and in creating opportunities to impact individual lives. And she believes that a good library contributes to the quality of life in every community. So let's welcome Cheptoo.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really, really glad to be here today talking to you about digital inclusion and the digital divide. I don't know about how many of you are aware of this, but libraries have been bridging the digital divide since Al Gore invented the internet. You got it, okay, good. No, but libraries have been online since the 90s. I don't know any of you remember the Gopher system and that kind of thing, text-based web system. We've been providing access for a very, very long time. But the challenges that we have with libraries is the demand for those resources, especially the computer and internet access and Wi-Fi, cannot be met anymore by four walls of the library. And so one of our goals is to figure out how we scale what we are doing by collaborating in the community with various organizations like Connecting for Good to really expand digital access in the community. Looking at working with Michael Liimatta, what we're calling community learning centers, where we are putting computers in various places, including the city community centers, public housing, possibly churches and possibly religious organizations, neighborhood organizations and that kind of thing. We're in the process of putting plans together on how we go about doing that. But one of the things that we've done over the last year is actually convene several organizations in the city to talk about how do we do this together? What do we need to do as a community to bridge the digital divide and do it in a way that it is open, transparent, and everybody has a voice. Certainly, some of us are experts. We've researched how other communities have done digital inclusion, and we'd have tabled a report that says, this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to move ahead. But we really felt that it was important to get the community input. And so about in October of last year, we put together a digital inclusion summit where we had over 250 people attend to just discuss what is happening with the digital divide. What is the ecosystem of the digital divide look like in Kansas City? What are the missing gaps? What do the community want to see? And it was very, very interesting because the diversity of the people that we got in that in the summit included high-level educators, civic leaders, funders, and citizens who senior citizens who just wanted to be part of the inclusion. I recall 5 ladies that came that worked together every week to get together to teach each other technology. And they came to the summit to learn, and what they did is they divided each other among the different sessions, so later on they can get together and really figure out to move forward and that kind of thing. I just checked the list for the town hall meeting that we're having on Friday, and all of them have signed up to return. Those are exciting stories, and I think it was a good approach to make sure everybody was involved. So what is the outcome of the summit? We will be announcing that at the town hall meeting on Friday. I will share with you some highlights today, but the full report we will be unveiling to the public on Friday at 9 o'clock. If you want to follow us on Twitter when you're gone, it's called Include KC. We will also post the video of the town hall as well as the report and all our documents that we've used over time to get to where we are today. So I'll just give you some highlights of the outcome of the report. One of the things that we've also done that we're going to unveil on Friday is we created a clearinghouse website. We just looked around, and it was really hard to figure out for the community to figure out to go to the library's website to look at what classes, so the training they have, to go for Connecting for Good website to find out what. So we decided, let's create a portal of digital inclusion activities in Kansas City, so that the community comes there and we can direct them to the various resources that are available in the community. We've taken all the training courses that are happening and put them in that portal. We've actually, thank you Smart Chicago, we stole from you or we borrowed from you, looking at your resource that you build, the database that you build that allows the community to come in and search to find, where can I find a Wi-Fi hotspot? Who is giving training which place has free public access computer? Who is training for what? It also has a place for practitioners to be able to populate their information on the website. One of the things that I think as your communities begin to think about this that we found out is that there are a lot of free online courses out there that you can bring and provide access easily, but what we found is that it really got confusing because people were dropping from this brand that you have to this other brand, and it just really became messy. So one of the things that we hope to do is to really sit down and curate all the training that is going out there, figure out what is the best out there, and actually customize that to fit our community. So the key, there are 10 themes that came out of the summit. One, create a collaborative movement among digital inclusion initiatives. The comments we keep on getting is, we don't want another structure. We don't want another bureaucracy. We need a movement. We need to really work on this and make this a movement. And we don't want people that are, somebody's going to have several meetings and board meetings and committee meetings, but let's just create a movement to really make this work. Reframing digital inclusion around geographic and organizational lines. I mean, that was really very interesting. Given our area in Kansas City, you have the bi-state, but then you also have organizational structure. You have what the school does, what libraries do. You have funding models that all of us have. But with technology, that we should get rid of that, right? I mean, could we not use the technology that we have to actually get rid of that? So I thought that was a very, very strong point. Again, we are really going to pursue that. Building a stronger awareness of real opportunities and aspirations. For those people who don't find the technology relevant, how do you communicate with them? How do you package your message so that they understand that this is important, that they be online? One thing that I think is very powerful, we did not think about it, and I'm very glad that we involved the community, is that it is critical for the communities that we're trying to reach, the low-income communities, the communities that are in the urban core, that we must involve faith-based organizations. They must be they must be at the table because they have their membership, they know how to connect with them. The idea of putting computers inside churches, but they are a key factor in how we actually reach those communities. Meaningfully engage business in digital inclusion. Find out what businesses are looking for in terms of workforce. What kind of skill sets do they want from their workforce? And then walk around in the community to actually develop those skills and offer those to the community so you have a ready workforce to work with organizations within Kansas City. Take advantage of cross-generational opportunities. Get the old and the young together. If the teenager is so familiar with the technology and grandma does not know the technology, how do you work with that teenager to help his family advance their technology knowledge and that kind of thing? I don't know how we'll do that, but again, we will be pursuing that and figure out how we do that. Addressing concerns, risks, and fears. There are a lot of fears of people going online in safety and your identity theft and that kind of thing. But the interesting factor for us, Michael mentioned the 70% of the kids in the Kansas City School District that do not have access. What we heard from them was that some of the kids, the school district started a one-to-one laptop program for the kids to take their laptops home. Some of these kids in the communities are scared to walk the streets from school to home with their laptop for fear of being mugged and somebody stealing their laptop. I mean, that is a serious issue, a major serious issue. So it's not, I mean, so again, something that we found, again, we're going to be looking into that. Access barriers extend well beyond technology issues. There are cultural issues, there are language issues, there are those people with disabilities, several issues. And so don't just look at the technology as the barrier. There are other issues, social issues that we need to be looking at to narrow the divide. Establishing benchmarks, best practices, and a comprehensive strategy. I think the group felt that it was important for the community that was trying to bridge the digital divide or be inclusive, have the same way of doing things, don't duplicate efforts, have some standards, okay? And so that with standards and with a unified way of approaching inclusion, we can actually measure, we can compare, and we can see that we are moving the needle forward. It's the importance of multi-year funding to develop and sustain programs. This is a big one. You've seen around all the BTOP programs that were started out there when the stimulus money went away. What happened? You know, I think Smart Chicago did a wonderful job where they transitioned from the BTOP money into actually forming an organization that continues to move the mission forward. So as a community, how are we going to do that? What does that structure look like? How is that funding going to happen? And funding from multiple sources, from the federal government, from the city, from private funders and that kind of thing. How are we going to get that funding to actually continue continue trying to bridge the digital divide? And so one of the things that we talk about, a lot of cities have 1% of public art. Why not 1% for digital inclusion? Cities have funding for building traditional infrastructure. Why not a percentage of that to build the next century infrastructure? There are a lot of things that we can do as communities to close the divide, make sure everybody is inclusive, and as you had the president, it's a necessity, it's a social justice, it's not a luxury. Thank you.
Thanks. And our final speaker, who really needs no introduction since her organization was just mentioned by President Obama. Debs Socia, Executive Director of Next Century Cities, but she really is on this panel today because she created and directed the wildly successful program in Boston called Tech Goes Home.
It's really nice that this is clear because otherwise you couldn't see me. It's always an issue for me when I stand at podiums, and I typically stand to the side for that purpose. So yes, I really have to say I'm very passionate about digital inclusion. It's been something I have spent an awful lot of my life working on. And I actually got involved in it because I was a principal of a very big one-to-one laptop school in Boston. One of the first urban laptop schools in the country. And you're exactly right, my kids could not take their laptops home. And it wasn't because I was afraid of them getting stolen. I was afraid my kids would get hurt when they got stolen. And I wasn't putting a target on my kids' back. And so I had to come up with a way to manage that differently. And there was an existing program in Boston called Tech Goes Home that we sort of took over and changed to fit the needs of a much more contemporary audience. It had been around for a while. And at that point, I was running Tech Goes Home for 200 students and their families a year. The vast majority of the Tech Goes Home component in Boston. And when the city wrote their BTOP grant, they asked me to help write it. I helped write it, and then they said when they got it, hey, Deb, you should come and run it. And so I went and ran it, and it really is a great program. So I forgot to bring the clicker. Thanks. Whoops, wrong way. So, and I will, at the end, give you a little commercial about Next Century Cities, because how can I not do that, right? But anyway, so for us, very similar to what you said, Michael, we really consider it, you can't really solve this problem unless you address these three issues. You have to talk about hardware, and you got to figure out how to get hardware in the hands of folks. You got to do some kind of training. We did some pretty extensive training. In our case, it was 15 hours of training on how do you live, learn, earn, work, and play more effectively through technology. In other words, we're looking to impact quality of life. So we taught families about common sense media. If you have children and you haven't looked at common sense media, you really should. It's fabulous. It's a great way to know if a resource is appropriate for your child or not. And I'm talking everything from video to video games to books. So you really should check it out if you've got children or grandchildren. To teaching our families how to use the Where's My School Bus site in Boston. So they got GPS on the bus. It's snowing all the time in Boston. They'll tell you exactly where the bus is. To very concrete, simple things that make your life easier, right? We also did talk a lot about how do you save money, right? So how can you use, for example, the Google phone and pay 3 cents to call back home to the Dominican Republic versus using one of those calling cards and spending 35 cents a minute, right? How do you use online banking because you get your check direct deposited instead of check cashing because you got to the end of the month before you got to the end of your check and you had to go right to get cash, right? So how do you think about the things that banking can do for you, online banking can do for you? So we really spent a lot of time on that. And then, and by the way, we actually gave Chromebooks to our folks. We originally started with refurbished, but I neither had the space nor the transportation to make that work. So rather than buy a truck and rent a warehouse, I bought brand new Chromebooks and worked with a vendor who stored them and delivered them when I needed them. It ended up costing me the same thing. And then third, access. That probably is the hardest piece, but I would agree with you as well that if you get the other two right, the access piece is less problematic. So, Internet Essentials is available in Boston. It's not always easy to sign up for. A very small percentage of families that are eligible actually get online. A lot of our folks ended up paying full price. However, there's also now through Mobile Beacon and Everyone On. If you haven't connected with those organizations, you should. If you need a connection, ask me, I'll get you connected. But we had a special portal for Boston. Our folks could sign in, put in their zip code based on the census data about income within that zip code. You can get a 4G hotspot for $10 a month. And if you're transient, which again, lots of our folks are, that can go with you. If you're homeless and you're living in a shelter, that can go with you. So there's a real advantage to that for our transient folks. We also ended up running a program for micro businesses. So we had people who made sock puppets, and people who did hair braiding, and people who were caterers, and who were mom and pops and had never touched a computer. And we taught them how to use Square so they could take a credit card, and it immediately improved their business. We also ran it for preschool children who the word gap is so enormous. How can we do something before they get to school rather than waiting till they get there and give them an intervention? So it was a wide range of folks. We also worked with seniors and disabled folks. We had classes for deaf folks and blind folks and kids in wheelchairs, you name it, and we provided the resource. And so the strategy for us was really to get in the neighborhood, right? What are the neighborhood assets, including faith-based organizations, who are the most powerful ally you have in this work? So we worked with schools, libraries, community centers, Boys and Girls Clubs, Salvation Army, shelters, you name it, we worked with them. Whoever was in the neighborhood and was a trusted asset, those are the folks you want to talk to. Folks don't always want to, at least not in Boston, leave their neighborhood. There's a sense of safety there, especially related to gang issues. Sometimes you cannot cross certain boundaries. And/or, I don't know if this is true for all of you, but in some parts of Boston, public transportation is pretty awful, right? So it's not always easy to get across the city. So we made it as easy as possible to attend. We were lucky because we had great support from Mayor Menino when he was alive, God bless him, and Mayor Walsh, the current mayor in Boston. We did a train the trainer method. So in other words, the person who actually did the training was a librarian in the library, the teacher in the school, somebody a congregant in the church, so that they not only did they provide the training and they were already a trusted person they knew, but next week when everybody else was gone, that person was still there, they could still ask questions, right? It felt comfortable. It changed the scenario. The other thing we did was we vetted a whole ton of online assets with great resources. By the way, it's techgoeshome.org. It's all open and free. You can use all those resources. Some are Boston specific, but many are not. And we told the trainers, this is a buffet. You look at what's here. You know the people in front of you. You choose those units that make the most sense to you. Oh, I'm already going to have to stop. I'm going to have to go fast. So, so we were in 120 locations. Let me see. So I'm going to move on. So the big questions people always ask me are about cost, sustainability, and replicability. So in terms of cost, the cost gets lower every year because the technology gets cheaper. When you work in a library, I did not pay the librarians because the librarians were already working and already had a mandate to provide digital inclusion training. So the big cost to me was the Chromebook. And we had 2 staff, and we ended up with a third halfway through, and we supported 14,000 Boston residents in 3.5 years. So it's entirely doable. Sustainability, we did sustain beyond BTOP at the same rate. We found some funding. We also convinced the city that they really ought to help us out, and they've been really great about that. But it really is part of what we all should be doing. And replicability, it's definitely replicable. In fact, it's currently running in Chattanooga. And it's run in New Mexico and New York and a couple of other places. It's entirely replicable. If you want to talk to the folks at Tech Goes Home, feel free to contact me. I'll make a great introduction. They'll give you a hand. They give you everything for free except their time. They might charge you a little for their time because it's gotten hard for them to manage their job and doing that too. So this is a problem that is complex and it's been around for a long time. It is not quickly solvable. So there are quick, simple, inexpensive interventions. The problem is they don't work, right? So I think you really need to think about this as a long-term intervention, and it's going to take some money, and it's going to take some commitment and energy. But we can do this if we have a will to do this. That's what it's about. Do we really have the will to do this? And we really do have to think of it as a civil rights issue. So last thing I'm going to show you are the principles for next century cities. And you'll notice we do talk a little bit about digital inclusion by saying that high-speed internet is a community-wide endeavor. And part of that is making sure that all of our citizens have access. And so I'm really happy to help anyone with digital inclusion if they have questions or if they want resources. And if you're interested in next century cities, you know, I gotta be really pleased that the president happened to mention us today. That's an understatement, but if you are interested in hearing more about it, please do contact me. I'd love to tell you more about what we're doing to help cities. Thank you.
Sorry, folks. It looks like we're kind of 5 minutes. Are there any burning questions? Okay, any burning questions? Otherwise, track down these incredible people at the reception, because you don't need to reinvent the wheel. As we've been saying all week, steal like an artist, and these indeed are artists up here. Questions?
Michael, how do you pay for the wireless in the Section 8 house?
Okay, the housing project that we showed here, we originally got a $40,000 program that was a combination of crowdfunding and some money from One Economy to buy the equipment. So we supplied, it cost us about $40,000 to put up the radios. And we secured a free 100 megabit connection from a local wireless ISP right now. So there is no ongoing cost except for our maintenance of the radios that are out there. Wireless mesh networks are not expensive. It's just a matter of having somebody with a technology background to maintain and install them. The biggest expense is always the upfront. The ongoing is not that much. And you know, when you think about a gigabit, you can take a gigabit and provide over 1,000 families with a 20 meg connection if you have that one fiber drop.